Hey everybody, great to be here for MinneBar fall version. My name is Zack Steven and I've got a session today called Ditch the Pitch 2. It's a founder-friendly Vcquel to a session that I've done at MinneBar last year called Ditch the Pitch, Founder-Friendly Ways to Get Started and Get Funded. So I just got to give great credit to Joe. Was awesome to hear his energy and his advice. The whole keep learning, get started approach really will carry through this conversation as well. So excited to be here. You know, of course, it's MinneBar. It's a beautiful day. That's fitting. MinneBar is usually the most beautiful day of the spring, either that or a snowstorm. But excited for the chance to kind of present the next iteration of this content with you today online. So let's dive in. Here's what we're going to talk about today in this session. First off, a quick introduction about me and what brings me to this place and thinking why these ideas are important. Why ditch the pitch? What's that all about? Founder friendly. What does that mean? What are the attributes of something that's founder friendly or not? And then some practical tips on getting started as presumably a non-technical founder launching a tech business. And options for getting funded and some alternatives to a lot of the narratives that we're currently hearing that have a predominantly VC venture capital type focus. There's a lot of new options kind of out there in the world that I want to raise visibility about as a part of this presentation. So to kick it up with a little bit of my startup stand-up. So have you heard the one about the woman who funded her startup with customer revenue? No, you haven't. And unfortunately, it's not really a joke. That's kind of the truth, is that these narratives of the self-funded, independent, bootstrapped, non-white male founder can be hard to come by. But the good news is that lots of founders are succeeding these days, starting technical companies, even as non-technical founders, leveraging tools and platforms and financing frameworks that weren't so available in the past. So part of what I'm hoping to do today is to amplify some of these stories about the experiences that I've had and the clients that I've worked with at CloudBurst to start sharing a more broad narrative so more people can experience the thrills of starting their own company. A couple of disclosures to get out of the way. First off, about who I am. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an optimist, so take that with a grain of salt. And I'm biased towards bootstrapping or self-funding, kind of independent approach to entrepreneurship, doing what you can with what you have. I am not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I know enough to be dangerous in those regards, but certainly take the comments that I have here with a grain of salt, and they certainly shouldn't override any of your own experience or expertise that you might talk to other folks about. And also, I'm not anti-VC. There's nothing wrong with venture capital. It's a great tool. I think the issue is more about how many situations people try to apply it to and how much share of the overall fundraising landscape and press it commands. So that's what I'm working on today, is not to be anti-VC, but to help people understand when that's appropriate and what some other options are. A little bit more about my own background story and kind of what brings me to this place and feeling that these topics are important. I started my entrepreneurial adventure in high school, St. Paul Central High School, selling candy out of a duffel bag. You can see it in the upper left there. Part of what that taught me in the early days, I didn't set out to start selling candy and buy a whole bunch of candy and bring a duffel bag to school and see if anybody wanted some. I had some candy for myself, and people started asking me if they could buy it from me. And I started thinking, well, then if you buy it from me, probably my candy can be free. And before you know it, I had a duffel bag full of all kinds of stuff and was able to make a decent income that worked with my school schedule. From there, I've had some experience as an inventor. I patented a product that I came up with when I was in high school, got a patent for that while I was in college at Grinnell College studying studio art. And I've kind of come since that time to see entrepreneurship as art, really, like sculpture. It's very creative. And so that's kind of the approach that I'm bringing to how we put these pieces together of a business or a technology to make something that's beautiful and useful and valuable. The other kind of screenshots and metrics and things like that of logos, just kind of are touch points along my own way of getting myself into credit card debt from the very beginning, quitting my job, going into my $1 million idea full time too soon, convincing my wife to do the same and help pursue this entrepreneurial journey with me. And over time, moving my way from manufacturing and sales and product into software through crowdfunding and friends and family and a variety of experiences. Even one point selling cars to make ends meet to support my family. I've been through this experience, and I'm hoping to share the upsides and the downsides with you today to help you move faster and take advantage of the opportunities that exist now that weren't there in the past. So why ditch the pitch? So of course, that's kind of a lot of narratives and even some great sessions at MinneBar about your pitch and how to make the pitch for your startup. And certainly in my job at CloudBurst, I'm CEO and co-founder. We're a startup studio, and our mission is to help non-technical founders launch tech companies that succeed. And so I'm hearing and talking with a lot of founders, and I have been doing this for years, and I get a lot of energy from hearing about people's passion. But so often I find that they're stuck in a bit of a loop of preparation and pitch perfection and trying to think of just the right words to anticipate exactly what they should say and how things are going to go. And sometimes it can blur the lines of, is it preparation or is it procrastination, really? What is it that's stopping you from actually moving forward? And it's not just the perfectly honed pitch that in most cases people are going to try to make to somebody who doesn't know them to convince them to invest money in a product that doesn't yet exist. And that's not really a recipe for success. So my effort here is really to say, with all of the energy that's going into pitching and convincing people with money to invest in your idea, let's shift more of that energy towards the things that you can do to convince potential users and partners or other people who have the services that you need to launch your business and make that vision real. Let's focus on energy on that. So that means keep it simple. Focus on your why and your customer. It's going to be a grind. No matter how lucky you might get or how fast things go, there's no doubt that you need some kind of internal motivation and passion to sustain you about why this is a problem that's important to solve, and who else besides yourself has this problem that you can be excited about solving it for and being connected to. If you're just in it because you think the Uber for this market or this or that market is going to be a great opportunity to live a startup dream lifestyle, I think that's also not likely to succeed and sustain you through the challenges and the iterations that are going to come. So if you can really stay grounded in why and who the customer is, that will help you find what their problems are, that they're willing to use your solution for those problems and ultimately pay you for that solution, so that you're on to actually building a business, not just a product. So I'd also say, think about what would you do if you had the money? Because I'm sure there's something that you can do with the resources that you have right now that move you closer to validating that there's somebody out there that is actually interested and willing to pay for the idea that you have. So think about, okay, say I got these checks, say I'm raising 50 grand, or I think I need $100,000. What would I do if I had the money? Well, then I would flesh out all the requirements for what I want to build. Well, you can do that in advance. Well, then I would start emailing these potential customers. Well, no reason you can't email them now. A lot of times there's things that you can do already. And so keep pushing that limit of what would you do if you had the money? And then, like I said, why not do it anyway? Just get started. So one quick way to get started to kind of get around the business planning side, because it is super important as the founder to share your vision, to recruit the team, to get the money that you need, and to be clear about what you're doing. There's a great template from John Benzik, who's here in town with Venture SUPERFLY. And I would recommend their template for the easy flow business plan. I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, I've looked at Sequoia decks, all kinds of stuff. This is a great way to kind of help synthesize and just get you past that thing of feeling like, great, I've got a deck, now I can move on. So when we're talking about founder friendly, what does that mean? At the core, it kind of comes back to the entrepreneur and the founder at the center. And for a lot of people, entrepreneurship really is about independence. It's about a chance to create something new in the world that doesn't exist yet, or build a company and a culture that reflects your own values or the experience that you want to have at work. It solves a problem in your way. I mean, there's no way that we actually need most new businesses. We don't need another pizza place. We don't need another coffee shop. We don't need another email SaaS program, but yet there's always ways to do it better. So if you as an entrepreneur have a vision A lot of people, it's about, I think this is how it should be and I want to make it that way. And at the end of the day, money itself doesn't build the products, it's people that do. The reason people need money, generally speaking, in software businesses especially, is to hire people to do the design, the marketing, the sales of these products. And so the money is just a pathway towards actually the things that are going to make the difference. But just a bunch of money in a bank account isn't going to build a business. So founder friendly also preserves options for a range of business outcomes. And as we'll talk a little bit more down the path here, as you start to take on investors or other types of funding, that has future implications, which can be great. But they also, you should just know that as you get started, that's the path that you're on. So founder friendly options give you a range of outcomes where you might be able to say, I guess actually now this business is working well enough for me and my co-founders right now as it is, and we want to be able to take it in this direction or retain ownership of it. So to that point, founder-friendly options help the founder retain control. I'm sure we've all heard the stories of people who get into a business and they raise investment, they get other people involved, and then the CEO, the co-founding team is out the door. Maybe justifiably, sometimes not, but either way, you can just lose control and the chance to actually be a part of seeing your vision come to life. So it's important to care about dilution and you're not giving away too much control, especially early on. Another point I like to call out is that founder friendly really respects founders' time. That's another precious commodity that you have. And of course, it's what you can invest at this point in your project, depending on where your cash situation is. But it's also possible just to spend a lot of time and not value your own time sufficiently. So whether you're continuing to reading and learning and networking and connecting, just make sure that the time that you're spending is really directed towards validating if you've got something that's worth spending this much time on. Because if it's not this thing, it will be the next thing, especially if you've got that why kind of at the core. Founder-friendly things allow focus on execution over speculation so that you don't have to, it's not all drawn out about future values and all kinds of terms. It's really just what kind of agreement can we reach now that allows us to move forward. And then repayments and options like that really can be flexible based on the success of the business, not to constrain the company. It's not a payday lending type of situation where the terms are so high that really it hampers the ability of the company to succeed long term. There's some more language around this kind of from a legal document standpoint with a framework called the Founder Friendly Standard here at Isaiah's blog. So if you're interested in that angle, if you're working on paperwork or raising funds, just make sure that you understand the implications of what you're signing up for and what that means for you down the road. So let's talk a little bit about, jump right to the top here. Top 20 reasons startups fail. Number 1, no market need. Probably not a surprise, but sometimes hard to hear that the rest of the world isn't exactly looking for the same solution that you think is just like the next best thing since sliced bread. So this is just to kind of reiterate that the biggest thing that's going to stand in your way of actually succeeding at your startup is that you're building something that people don't need, or that they don't want sufficiently that they're willing to pay for in a way that you can afford to consistently deliver it. So if you can orient your earliest activities, if you've got something that people need, you can figure out how to get it funded. If you have something that people need, you can figure out how to get it built. But you can also get plenty of things built and funded that people don't need. And that ends up to be quite frustrating. So keep your focus on, do I really have something that people need? So that's where this Get Started framework comes in. So what are some ideas around specific ways that you can get started? I've got 10 tips here based on my own experience and talking with clients. So keep your day job or your other income until it's actively hampering your startup. There's this kind of appeal for startup and going all in and about the hustle and everything. It's really just important that you don't put too much pressure on yourself before it's the right time, because that can just really end up pressurizing the situation and not giving you the time that you actually need to find the market fit. So just make sure, do it in nights and weekends, do it in your extra time, keep your other source of income while you can. That's going to help you get further. Incorporating yourself, have a business entity, an LLC or something. Stripe, the payment platform, has a framework called Atlas with some resources for getting a business and LLC set up. I think that's just a great thing in general for people to have a business, so that business expenses, marketing expenses, equipment, things that you buy and incur as you go about validating this idea. You have a business that you're working with. And as I mentioned before, understanding this why and the who. How do you find a more direct connection to the people that you want to solve this problem for? Identifying the problem that people will pay you to solve. I've said that already. I think that's important. If you can be kind of providing something that either they can make money with or they can save time with, that's a lot more aligned towards generating a sustainable business than things that may just be novel or interesting. And I've certainly created my share of those. Number 5, solve it with tactics that won't scale. It's easy to think of the bigger picture and we're going to have to accommodate this many users and all of these different things. And you know, may you have the good fortune to get to the point where you break your own software. If you can solve your things with tactics in the early days that are manual but look automated, or they won't scale to a certain number of users, that's fine. At least you can get started, and then you know that when you're making the investment in the things that will scale, that there's reason to do it. Delay the legal and partnership documents and equity arrangements, I would say, as long as you can. They just get complicated, they take time and money, and sometimes you can get started in something before there's even anything. And I had a conversation with a founder recently, and now his energy is going into figuring out how to buy out his co-founder, and they don't even have any revenue yet. And we just got something that's gotten more complicated before it's even a thing. Again, I'm not an attorney. There's certainly a place to have those things aligned before you get going. So it's a delicate line, but sometimes people focus on it too soon. Make sure that the stock between partners is vesting over a period of time, like 4 years, just to acknowledge the level of commitment. It's not like on day one, we both own half of this thing. That can get people into trouble. Recommend trying to choose systems over goals where failure equals some kind of future success, where either we can leverage the tech that we built for a different market, we can leverage the team that we built for a different product, we can build a different product for the market that we found, we can sell a different thing to the partner that we met. Just kind of keep an open mind with what you're building and building it in a way that you have options. Surround yourself with people who are creative and curious. Communities like MinneStar, fantastic for this. People who are learning and building and making things, trying stuff. That's super important because this is vulnerable, challenging, oftentimes not glamorous work, but it's for people who are driven by that internal feeling that I can't not do it. And number 10, kind of new this year, try no-code options like Airtable or Webflow or Zapier, especially for non-technical founders like me, to help find this product market fit and some level of traction without having to invest a lot in software development. This is a lot of exciting things going on in the no-code space. And we recently launched a community at no-code.mn where people can just start joining the conversation and learn about what people are building in this way. For instance, myself, this last spring, as the murals will be painting to commemorate George Floyd's life and Black Lives Matter, I built an app using a framework called Glide based off of Google Sheets in a Saturday morning, effectively, that allowed me to go out with my family and start taking pictures of murals around town, but then share them on a map and out so that other people could also be capturing murals. And that's not a business, just an app, but I was able to build it and people can use it. And it's just a great example of what's possible now with tools for even just proving a concept to get something which is particularly satisfying if you're a non-technical founder like me. So tools like Glide, Google Sheets, Gmail, Zapier for connecting things together. I'd recommend getting yourself familiar with these tools and just seeing what you can build. So shifting the conversation a bit to the get funded side of things. So if you're taking these steps to get started and do what you can with what you have, of course, there's limits to even how far that can go, and that limit is different for different people. So the classic stages of funding, which I've took from a blog post from Fred Wilson at Union Square Ventures, so venture capitalist that I've been following for a long time. The step one, build the product, get to the market, find the product market fit. That's the earliest stage, whether you can self-fund that or you need seed funding or pre-seed or pre-pre-seed, or there's all kinds of names out there. It's basically the first money that you need. That's what you need to do, is actually build something that can actually be used by someone and that you can find that it's worth building more of. Then your step two is you build the team to operate and grow the business. Maybe that's a Series A, maybe that's a seed. These names keep changing all the time. It's more about the progression. But then step 3 is scaling the team and ramping the revenues to take the market. Maybe it's to get into a vertical or another geographic location or another service for your same customer. Step 4 in a more traditional venture model might be that now we've got the market, we've been funding growth, now we want to get back to cash flow positive so that we can have some profits that sustain the business. And ultimately, step 5, generate liquidity. Of course, people like to cut steps out of this process if they can, but the point of this slide is more just once you get started on these steps, you are on a progression of things that whoever invested 100,000 in you now wants someone else to invest $1 million in you later for a higher valuation, and that person wants someone else to invest 10 million at a higher valuation, and that person wants your company to go public at another value. You just, again, that can be great if that's the path that you're on, that's the company that you want, and you understand what you're signing up for. But even taking equity-based funding in the earliest stages puts you on a path towards, of course, fulfilling that obligation to return that capital and then some to your investors. So be mindful of that. Quick list here on how to fund your company. Not real major surprises here, but cash, savings, cash flow from a business, pre-orders or crowdfunding. If you can get revenue from customers, fantastic. Debt. Different people have different access to levels of debt of credit card or personal loans or convertible debt. Traditionally, software startups are really hard to fund with any kind of traditional lending. Equity, as I called out before, it's pretty much the most expensive option, even though it feels free at the beginning. Down the road, you're trying to build something really valuable, so be mindful of how you do that, and don't do it sooner than you need to, except maybe with a co-founding team. But that's where friends and family or accelerators or angel investors or venture capital comes in. You can see I called out there, not really on the venture capital, at least not in the earliest stages of your business. And then revenue share and a shared success agreement that I want to just touch on for a couple of minutes, as well as a new way of funding your business. So this is some content from indie.vc, which is a firm that I have a lot of respect for in terms of how they're evolving venture capital and who they fund and how they do it. But some of the problems here is probably not new news to this audience, but 98% of VC dollars flow to one gender, 80% flow to 3 states, 1% flow to Black and Latinx founders, and only 0.6% of businesses raise any venture capital dollars at all. Probably hard to see on the screen, but the blue dot is all businesses. There's a small pink dot at the bottom, which is actual venture backable companies. And within that, there's a teeny black dot of actual billion-dollar valuations. And just to illustrate that venture capital is not the right solution for most businesses, even though a lot of founders spend a lot of early time trying to pursue that path. One of the other problems with the overall industry is that 64% of investment rounds fail to return even 1x the capital, and only 4% return greater than 10x. So they're really playing a game where they need 1 or 2 companies out of a portfolio to return the fund or better. And certainly there are outliers, but most of the businesses that get funded are just gonna not succeed. And those are risks that everybody's willing to take. But if you're trying to build a sustainable business and you're comfortable with an outcome somewhere in the middle of less than 10x, maybe something other than venture capital is better aligned for your own purposes. Similarly, deal sizes are getting bigger, so there's just real missed opportunity in early stage, smaller scale. Maybe it's not going to be $1 billion business, but it still can be a great, important contribution and a meaningful business for the founding team, as well as a powerful tool for wealth creation within a local community. So there's just some challenges in the model, certainly as a one-size-fits-all type of solution for how startups can and should be funded. So there are some founder-friendlier options, kind of following on the narrative that I said before in terms of indie.vc. I'd recommend checking out their content and their agreement, which has a revenue share component to it. Earnest Capital, of which Kevin McCardle here from the Twin Cities is a partner there. They've got a shared earnings agreement, and these companies have made their agreements public, which is super helpful for people like me to kind of iterate on. And then at CloudBurst, we have a shared success agreement that I'll talk just briefly a little bit more about. There's other examples here in town, even with the Venn Foundation and program-related investments, Tiny Seed, Rob Walling and the Accelerator and their seed investment strategy, and Hill Capital and their equity-based nodes. So to talk for a second about this shared success agreement that we've mentioned, and I see there was a question about the website or org that I mentioned for shared equity. I'll talk about the shared success agreement and see if that gets to your point. But we've developed this at CloudBurst out of our experience and my experience on both sides as a founder and as a service provider to founders with Kevin Spring from Frederickson and Byron. But basically, it allows a service provider to contribute services rather than cash. So maybe you don't need to get the money. You can go direct to the service provider and say, hey, will you contribute some of your services in exchange for a share of my future revenue? So that allows non-accredited, non-high net worth individuals to contribute. If I have the talents that you need, but I'm not going to be your co-founder or take taxable equity stake in your business, maybe I can contribute my services or some of them to your startup. Makes it more possible for more people to share in the success of companies. And I'm just getting a share of future revenue. Maybe just 5% of your future revenues will come back to me until my services have been repaid. But in exchange for that, maybe I'll defer my start date until next spring when you actually go live. But I'd like to get 3x. If I was going to do $10,000 worth of work and I'm not taking any money right now, maybe I'm interested in being able to earn $30,000 over the next 5 years as your company grows. But it's not a liability. It's not equity. It's more of a shared success model where if the company doesn't have revenue, the service provider doesn't get paid. But at the same time, it's not a debt obligation of the business, and it allows people who have time to invest the opportunity to invest that for a chance at sharing and generating future revenue streams from the success of the companies that they help. And there's more about this model on our website at cloudburststudio.com, a template that people can download and use for themselves to generate these agreements and explore. And this is the kind of conversation that I'm really interested in having around what have you done or which tools have you seen to help you overcome the things that stand in your way of making your vision real. And a lot of times hiring people to do the work that needs to be done to help your business grow is a key thing. So I think this the shared success agreement, something that we use with our clients. It's a great precursor towards subsequent rounds. But once that revenue share is paid back, there's no further obligation, no ownership stake. It's a clean way of engaging that we'd love to see more people adopt. So 25 minutes goes pretty fast for a session, but I would love to follow up with questions through the chat, through Twitter. I'm at Zack Steven, our company CloudBurst at CloudBurst SBC. We've got the No Code MN community going. Happy to have more people contributing and sharing what they're building and finding ways that we can help each other build a more thriving ecosystem here in Minnesota. Using some of these new tools and strategies, I think entrepreneurship has the power to create wealth and change lives, and it's exciting to see where that can go. You can get more information about shared success on our website. And I've got another session coming up a week from Saturday, a little bit of a different take, called Razorfold, Business Lessons from the Card Table. I'm doing that with James Zuber. We'll be talking about blackjack and poker playing and how some of the things that we learned doing those activities have applied to life in business, which I'm really looking forward to. So that's on Saturday, 17th at 10:30. And yeah, really appreciate the chance to share this content. Miss seeing people in person and the hustle and bustle of the hallways of MinneBar, but I'm sure appreciative of the organization for continuing to find creative ways to support the community and get us connected to each other and give visibility to all the great things that are happening in Minnesota tech. And glad to be a part of it, and hope there's a chance to continue the conversations. Love to hear what you think. So seems like we're about at lunchtime. Not sure if the chat's still open. No big line for pizza that I can direct you to, unfortunately. But thanks for joining in on the session, and hope our paths cross in the real world not too far down the road.